thank you, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here to talk with you about how to survive and thrive in academic medicine, which I think we all know is not perfect, but hopefully I'll share some tips and then this will springboard into our discussion. I do not have any financial conflicts of interest to declare. I do have research grant funding from the NIH and then some from those other groups on there, and I'm on the Anesthesia Patient Safety Foundation Board of Directors. I will share the objectives of the session, which are always the objectives of Raise Echo, which you're familiar with, but hopefully talk about some unique challenges that are faced by early career women, really all women in academic medicine, but with a focus on early career women. I was delighted to find the website for Raise Echo and to see what you all have covered already. So I'm happy to be your 7th session, but you've learned quite a lot already. And I know you haven't all been able to attend all the sessions, but I think it's really important that you've started to build this community that can talk really openly about some of the challenges that are faced. And I'm delighted to be able to contribute to that. So our focus is going to be on survival in academic medicine, and our case study feeds into this as well, and thinking about some of the challenges around academic medicine. Those of you, a few of you know me, but if you got to know me, you would know that I'm a podcast junkie. So one of the podcasts that I listen to is called Acadames, and it's a podcast that's hosted by 2 faculty members who I think are at UNC, but you can look and make sure. I don't want to say that. I know Sarah Birkin is on the left, and I forget the name of her partner on the right. I just know Sarah, that's why I know her name. But they ask at the end of every episode, they have a guest, and they say, is being a woman in academia a dream, a game, or a scam? And oftentimes people will say, well, it's kind of all of them. Depending on how they feel, they might say, you know, it's a dream, but we know that it's fraught. It's complicated. Academic medicine is, for lots of reasons. So I'll say that there's some good, there's some bad, and there's some ugly when it comes to academic medicine. The good pieces are that you have a really unique job. You know, when I think about all the things that I do, I'm a clinician, I'm a teacher, I'm a mentor, I do research, I'm an administrator, and on any given day, on any given week, it's different, which for me is great. I never get bored. I feel like I'm contributing to society, that I'm performing a social good. Certainly there's social status that comes with being an academic physician. So not just being a physician, but also being a member of the professoriate. You do get respect in your university and in society because of that position. And then you're super employable. So, you know, none of us want to leave our positions unless we choose to affirmatively. But if something does happen and we need to move, oftentimes we are able to find additional employment because we have so many skills that are sought after. In terms of the bad, I think these will look familiar. There can be a lot of production pressure in academic medicine because no margin, no mission, right? You have to make sure that you have enough throughput, although I hate that word because we're trying to help patients and make sure that they get better, but there is a profit and a financial imperative to consider in order for us to actually stay afloat. And so sometimes you do feel that production pressure to see a lot of patients or to get a lot of work done. We're very good at infantilizing our trainees. And I was talking with one of my external mentors the other day, and I've recently transitioned into being an associate professor. So I'm mid-career now. And I said, I feel like I've been infantilized my whole career. You can't do this, you can't do that. Your hands are tied, you're not ready. At my institution, on my faculty track, you're actually on probation until you get promoted. So it's like you're on probation for 10 years. And then all of a sudden I'm mid-career. And I'm like, wait, what happened? How did I go from being a baby to being mid-career? But we do that a lot. We sometimes have the illusion of power, but our hands are tied in really important ways by the bureaucracy that goes along with academic medicine. And then sometimes we have lower pay than in industry or private practice. I say sometimes because there are a lot of benefits that come with academic medicine, whether it's sabbatical credits or retirement contributions, and academic practices have over time tried to narrow that gap. So it's not always the case that academic pay is lower, but it is sometimes that way. And then there's the ugly. So as women in academic medicine, certainly for me as a Black woman in academic medicine, I feel like there are unspoken rules that I'm just supposed to know. And if I don't know, then I run into problems and no one really told me what the rules were. There are traditions that are sort of stifling, like we do things because this is how we've done them without a critical examination of should it be this way. There can be narrow definitions of what success looks like. And so if you are someone who has varied interests or does work that's a little bit outside the norm, whether that's a focus on social justice, or for me, it's qualitative research, in anesthesia, people look at me and they're like, what are you doing? I have no idea what that is. It can be difficult to succeed when people don't have a broad definition of what success could look like. And then it can feel like an old boys club, and there can be toxic comparisons between different types of faculty members that are really unproductive. So it's a balance, and I think you have to decide for yourself where you fit. I don't think there's a right answer for everybody, and sometimes the answer of whether the weaknesses or whether the strengths outweigh the weaknesses will depend on where you are in your career and what your other challenges, what your other responsibilities and obligations and priorities are. So that is a really personal decision, something we'll get to when we talk about the case study, but I don't want to suggest that the answer is academic medicine, but I do want to talk a little bit about how, if you choose to stay in academic medicine, how you can thrive, how you can feel like you really belong and really have fun being an academic physician. So first, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself because I think it's useful for you to know who's talking to you and get a sense of how much what I say might apply and how much might be different. So as I mentioned, I'm an anesthesiologist, so I spend time in the operating room trying to get surgeons to not kill their patients. I am an intensivist. That's actually where I spend most of my clinical time in the ICU, taking care of surgical critical care patients. And then I spend the majority of my time actually doing research and administration. So I do a lot of talking and presenting, but I do work that focuses on safety and patient-centeredness and implementation science. I bring a lot of perspectives to academic medicine, as many of you do. I am a spouse, I'm a mother, I'm a mentor, I'm a colleague, I'm a daughter, and so all of the comments that I give you are sort of inflected by these perspectives. I mentioned to you that I just got promoted to associate professor last year. I wanted to give you a brief timeline just to give you a sense of sort of where I've come from, and which, I'm happy to answer questions about that, but to give you some sense of how my thoughts about academic medicine have evolved over time. I graduated from med school in 2006. I'm a Gen Xer, I'm an Xennial. So I sort of get the millennials, but I'm still hanging on to Gen X. I'm Oregon Trail all the way. I went through anesthesia residency, critical care fellowship, where I got married in residency. I had my first baby. I have two daughters. My first daughter, Ami, in residency. Critical care fellowship, I did a 2-year research fellowship. At the end of that, I had my second daughter, Sarah, and took mat leave as I was transitioning onto faculty, and actually was on mat leave when I started on faculty, which was kind of cool. I asked my chair, I was like, can I do this? Can I just be on leave when I start? And he's like, I don't see why not. I said, cool, let's do that. Was on faculty for a few years, became the primary caregiver for my father, who lived with me from 2015 until he passed away in 2017. But that was a huge turning point for me because I'd been writing a K award. I was going to do a K. I was like, I'm research, I need more development. And then my father passed away, and I said, I don't need any more development. I'm going to write an R. Like, I don't need my hand held anymore. I just need money. And I decided to write an R. But that was a huge turning point for me because I stopped and I thought, what am I doing? Is this what I want to do? How do I actually get to where I want to be? And so for me, that was an important transition point. 2020 was a mess for everybody. It was a dumpster fire. There was COVID. I got promoted. I got an endowed chair. I got my first R01. It was a mess. It was just a mess, but we're on the other side. It's 2021 now. So I mentioned to you that I'm mostly a researcher. My lab focuses on safety and patient-centeredness in care, increasingly focused on equity, but that those two were our focus. I have a lab that doesn't always have this many people, but got undergrads, med students, residents, fellows that work with me. We do a lot of work on handoffs and outcomes after critical illness, and we use mixed methods, qualitative and quantitative methods. I have, for most of my short career, felt like I've been swimming against the tide in a few different ways. One is because my scholarship is a little different than what most anesthesiologists do and what many academic physicians do, which is focusing on safety and focusing specifically on handoffs and transitions, which by their definition are sort of, they don't belong to anybody. They're sort of in the interspaces. And so there hasn't been a lot of scholarship there, but that's increasing, thankfully. My methodologic orientation is a strong focus on qualitative inquiry, which physicians have not historically done. Again, that's building too, but that makes me a little bit weird. And I want to do interventional research. I've always wanted to do interventional research since I was a research fellow, which makes me a little bit weird too, because a lot of times people want to describe and think and learn about and associate, but not necessarily do right away. But I felt a very strong drive to actually change things. And then I'm underrepresented in medicine with respect to gender, race, and then first generation. I'm the first physician in my family, the first member of the professoriate. And so at many different turns, I felt like I didn't quite belong. So that's me. I want to share with you 3 lessons that I'm hoping will help inform the discussion that we have moving forward. The 3 lessons are to craft your story, to build a supportive community, and to know the rules of academic medicine. And I will go through each of these, but these are sort of the 3 takeaways that I would have for you. The first one is to craft your own story. So for me, I affiliate with lots of different groups. I am someone who's interested in safety, someone who's interested in health services research, critical care, implementation science. So I have a lot of different groups that I affiliate with, and it's a challenge and a risk that I just look too diffuse. Like I'm kind of all over the place. Like, why do you have all these titles? What is happening? Who are all these places? Why do you have all these logos? So advice I got from one of my mentors, Bob Dittis, who's at Vanderbilt, he said, pick a content area and pick a methodology. If you are considering a project or an endeavor that is both of those things, you should do it 100%. Don't ask any questions. So for me, it's acute care, teamwork, and communication. So if it has something to do with handoffs or communication in the hospital and it involves mixed methods, I'm all over it. If it's one of those things, you should think about it. So I've done handoff research that doesn't involve mixed methods, and I've done mixed methods research that doesn't have anything to do with communication. So, and I sort of decide case by case. If it is neither of those things, don't do it. And I remember writing a paper once about acute renal failure in the PACU, just because I felt like I needed to write a paper. And why? Like, why? This has nothing to do with me or anything I do. So I would say as you move forward, as you think about who you are and what your story is, think about ways to kind of curate a story that makes some sense to you and that is transmissible and explainable to other people. So again, if your research focus or your type of scholarship, that could be education, it could be anything. If that aligns with your content, then do it, and otherwise think real hard about it. The story that I told for promotion, so for those of you who are early stage, when you go up for promotion, you'll have to write a personal statement. It's not like the personal statement for med school. It is tooting your own horn, making yourself walk on water. It is explaining to the university provost why you deserve to be promoted. And so you have to tell a story. So the story I told was, I'm a physician scientist whose research agenda is focused on the development and empiric testing of strategies to optimize patient care, and that my goal was to be the consummate academic. So this is how I put it all together, even though I've done a lot of different things and it could seem very diffuse, because I was able to crystallize it into this story. It was very helpful when it came time to go up for promotion. And so I'd encourage you, whatever your story is, to come up with a story that feels cohesive and feels genuine to who you are. The second lesson is to build a supportive community, because you don't do this alone. You can't do this alone. You need a lot of folks. And you'll see Stephanie actually in that little pink picture down there on the slide. You'll need friends and allies, because there's no power differential there. You need people who are going to be a support, who can reality test with you and help you confirm or disconfirm whether something is good or bad, or whether you got your head on straight. You'll need mentors who spend a lot of time and energy working with you, but understand that mentorship is a mutually beneficial relationship. So you shouldn't feel bad about working closely with your mentors, because they do get a lot out of the relationship. And then you also need sponsors. So you need people that will open doors for you and give you a leg up and lend credibility to you as you advance in your career. And sometimes mentors and sponsors are the same people, but sometimes they're completely different. And it's very common for women to have mentors and maybe not have as strong a sponsor relationship. So again, I've had lots of people that have worked with me, whether they're people interested in inclusion and equity, whether they're researchers, people in my department, people who are, pushing to get folks vaccinated. Just find your community. And part of, as you think about whether you belong and whether academic medicine is right for you, hopefully you find places where you feel like you're supported and you've got folks that can go through the challenges with you. I wrote with colleagues a paper that co-opted Maslow's hierarchy of needs to try to figure out what women in academic medicine needed. And so it's been a really useful construct for us to think about all the different things you need to succeed. So you want to get to the top of that pyramid where you're self-actualized, but in order to do that, you need all the things below. You need your physiologic needs taken care of, where you actually you have a place to go to the restroom, you have a place to pump if you're nursing, you are able to rely on your schedule so you can take care of your family. You need to feel physically safe, you need to feel like you belong, you need to have a reputation, you have to have self-esteem, but also have esteem from others. And only at that point do you get to self-actualization. And there are responsibilities that you have to get you there, but there are also responsibilities that the institution has to get you there. And as you think about whether you're actually getting the support you need, think about whether your institution is doing those things that they're supposed to be doing to support you. I mentioned sponsors briefly because they are important. And so again, you want to think about whether you have those people that are helping you get a leg up, because that is important in surviving, thriving, and advancing in academic medicine. And then the last bit is to know the rules. We have at the School of Medicine, where I work at Penn, all these different faculty tracks and all these rules about how you get promoted, but there are rules. And so what our school's Committee on Appointments and Promotions tells us is, yeah, you can follow your bliss, do a career that's consistent with your interests and talents, but it has to align with the strategic goals of your department and the School of Medicine. So know who's paying your paycheck, know what their expectations are, and understand what those rules are, because you can sometimes get bitten if you don't play by those rules. At our institution, we have different faculty tracks, different expectations for those tracks, and you can be the best educator in the world, for instance, but if you're on my faculty track, it won't get you promoted. They want papers, they want reputation, and they want you to be a good enough teacher. So when I think about what I need to do, or what I needed to do to get promoted, I had to have an identifiable body of scholarship, I had to be a good enough teacher, and I had to have clinical practice that was all right. And that was my standard. But your standard may be different depending on where you are and what track you're in. I will say that the reputation is always important. No matter who you are, where you are, what track you're on in academic medicine, you will always have to develop and curate a reputation, whether that's a clinical reputation, research scholarship reputation, or something else, because your ability to advance will depend in part on what other people think about you. And your narrative and the story that you tell is going to be a key part in building that reputation. So as we wrap up, I have some concluding thoughts. First, the imposter syndrome is real. Like, everybody knows that, we feel it. From my perspective, you need to just kind of identify it and learn how to control it, but be assured that we all feel this, and it is a challenge for all of us. I have more tips on surviving in academic medicine. In the interest of time, will not go over all of these, but suffice it to say, you'll have to develop your own strategies for succeeding if you want to stay in academic medicine, but people have done it before. So there's lots of guidance, there's lots of help. This community is amazing for that. But there are some, you want to learn from other people that have been through the pathway. So 3 lessons, just to review, were to craft your story, build a supportive community, and to know the rules. And with that, I'm going to conclude, and I will stop sharing.